Good morning. This is the time and place for the Planning Hearing Officer hearings for January 15th, 2014. My name is Laura Stotler, and I will be conducting the hearing today as the Planning Hearing Officer. We have one case, and the relevant exhibits are posted on the panels located directly behind me. Under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.42 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a conditional use permit shall be granted if four required findings are present. They are that the proposed use is consistent with the elements and objectives of the general plan, that the use and its associated structures and facilities will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, the general welfare, or the environment, that the use and facilities will not adversely affect or conflict with adjacent uses or impede the normal development of surrounding properties, and that adequate public and private facilities, utilities, landscaping, parking spaces, and traffic circulation measures are or will be provided for the proposed use. Since the application today includes the sale, serving, or consumption of alcoholic beverages, there's an additional 5 criteria which must be considered. One, that the census tract has more than the recommended maximum concentration level of on-sale or off-sale uses, crime reporting district location of the existing or proposed use within a crime rate which exceeds 20% of the city average of Part 1 crimes, that the existing or proposed use does not or will not adversely impact any church, public or private school or college, daycare facility, public park, library, hospital, or residential use within the surrounding area, that adequate parking and loading facilities are or will be provided for the existing or proposed use, or other reasonable alternatives satisfy the transportation and parking needs of the existing or proposed use. And the 5th consideration is that notwithstanding consideration of the other criteria already listed, the existing or proposed use does or will serve a public necessity or public convenience purpose for the area. If the evidence presented in the application and at this hearing meets the criteria just described, then the planning hearing officer can either approve or impose conditions for approval on the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by the use of public notices, which were mailed to property owners located within 500 feet of the subject property. They were physically posted throughout the site in question, and the ad was placed in the local newspaper. So hearings will proceed as follows. First, I'll read a description of the application and the request. Then I'll read the reports received from other city departments and other letters or communications from interested parties. Well, in this case, we actually have a case planner who will go over a review of the case and also discuss some of the comments that we've received and make a recommendation. The applicant will be asked to come forward then, stating both name and address, and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time limit. And for the applicant, if there's multiple applicants, I have cards for 2 people. That 15 minutes is a total time for the applicant. Others in support of or in opposition will then be asked to come forward, and they will be given a 3-minute time limit. Lastly, the applicant will be given an opportunity to make closing comments if desired in response to testimonies given by preceding speakers within a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will be closed and the case taken under submission. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who have responded to the public notice, who have either spoke at this hearing or who have submitted written responses and who have also provided their address. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter, not the date of the hearing. Under the appeals provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal may obtain forms and brochures and the procedures from the Building and Safety Section Permit Services Center located in room 101 on the same floor of this building. If you wish to speak, please write your name and address on one of the speaker's forms which have been provided by the front door and submit it to our planning assistants. I would also like to inform everyone that the official proceedings of the planning hearing officer's hearing are recorded on tape as part of the public record. So with that, the first item, and the only item on this agenda, is located at the Grand Central Creative Campus. It's conditional use permit PCUP 1326237, request for alcohol service. The applicant is Adam Gilbert, case planner is Jeff Hamilton. This is an application for a conditional use permit to allow the on-site service and consumption of alcohol by employees and guests, but not the public, within the Walt Disney's Grand Central Creative Campus located in the industrial zone. Would you like to give a presentation first, or would you like me to go over the comments?
It's your preference, Madam Chair.
I will go over, I don't know what your presentation is, so I'll go quickly over the comments that we've received. I have received this morning, it came in, an email from Joanne Hedge, and it's related to this Rancho concerns with the alcohol permit. Jeff, will you be going over this letter, or the comments?
I wasn't planning to, but I could if you'd like me to.
Okay, let me raise the issues, and then you can address them during your presentation.
Okay.
The issues raised, they were concerned about visitor traffic and parking generation of concern to the neighborhood. There's concerns regarding driving routes and public safety on the Rancho streets during special events. They're concerned about suppliers and their traffic generation. They're concerned with cut-through use on some of the neighborhood streets, especially during rush hours. They made some suggestions for streets that could be used for accessing the site that would take traffic out of local neighborhoods. And then there's just concerns with just general traffic concerns, bike riders, discussion of, a lot of discussion on how to access the site. We also received an email from Kathy Braceland at AOL.com. Note that she lives on Davis Avenue, 2 blocks. She's concerned with why they're even asking for a permit. And they're concerned with people drinking and then driving in their neighborhood. We have an email from Barbara Elner. Also similar concerns. She has noted that along with Jennifer Pinkerton, they've already written of their neighborhood concerns to Disney, and then they're writing to us. It says they're concerned with the type of functions that Disney will have, and they're worried about parking in the neighborhood and guests of the parties driving through the neighborhood after a function. And then we also received an email from Jennifer Pinkerton, similar concerns with traffic, parking, construction noise in general, concern with parking in front of the Disney Child Care Center, how people will access the parties, and how that would impact the neighborhood. And then we have received comments from the police department. And the comments from the police department are standard, related to code sections and noise. No comments received from, or no concerns listed from fire department. No. And that concludes the comments that I received. Oh, no, we do have an email from Adam Gilbert, who is the applicant. I assume he's going to speak about his concerns. And that's it. With that, I'd like to ask the case planner to provide a presentation.
Thank you. Disney is proposing has applied for a conditional use permit so that they can serve alcoholic beverages to employees and guests during occasional special events. Disney has characterized this as like project wrap parties, when they've finished work on a major film or some major other project, and it might be a sort of a red carpet kind of thing, or it might be much smaller scale. They do these occasionally right now, but to do that right now, they have to get a temporary permit, a one-time, one-day permit from ABC, and Disney has characterized this process as rather cumbersome. The way to make this easier for them would be for them to apply as they have for a conditional use permit from us and a more permanent alcohol beverage control license from the state. This proposal is not covered by any of the development agreement or master parking plan or anything like that covers the special agreements that cover the campus, so it reverts back to the zoning ordinance, which is why they need the conditional use permit. They're proposing the service at 49 properties within the GC3 campus and the ABC 7 studios, which is not actually in the GC3 boundary area. It's sort of next to the campus, but it's not within the GC3 boundary area. There was a comment raised by one of the letters or emails that they thought that the proposal included the daycare property, the Disney daycare property, which is in the campus, but definitely is not one of the 49 locations where Disney is proposing to serve alcohol. A location map is on the board behind you that shows the boundary of the GC3 area and the 49 properties colored in light blue, where these potential locations would, the potential service would occur. The zoning map is below that, and the aerial photograph also just generally shows the GC3 campus, which on the aerial photograph, wherever you see those very large buildings, the large warehouse buildings, is essentially the Disney campus area. It's important to point out, again, that this is a proposal to serve employees and guests, but not the general public. They are not proposing to run a restaurant or a bar that would be available to the general public. These would be special events essentially available only to Disney guests and employees. Disney has a concern with one of the conditions, which one of the draft conditions essentially reiterates that fact of how this will operate. Disney's concerned that there may be a conflict with how ABC issues the permit. They will discuss that in more detail with you. This is condition 4, and there may be some disagreement about the wording of that condition. The property, the campus in general, this whole area is zoned industrial, and serving alcohol is allowed with the issuance of a conditional use permit. We don't think, staff does not believe that serving alcohol would be contrary to the general plan or create new safety hazards or issues for a few reasons. First, this is already going on the property. They're doing it through special event permits, one-time permits, and there's been no record by the police or anybody else that these special events are creating noise problems, traffic problems, public health or safety problems. With the conditions of approval, we think we have even more authority or even more regulatory control over what goes on out there during these events. And based on past history and the conditions of approval, we think we can say that there will not be a safety issue or that it would be inconsistent with the general plan. The police department reports that there are 33 establishments that provide alcoholic beverages within the census tract, where 7 is the recommended maximum. However, this really gets back to the issue of whether or not this service is available to the public or whether there have been problems. Again, service is not available to the public. This is not going to be a restaurant, not going to be a bar. The issues of overconcentration of alcohol and service go to evidence of safety issues, safety hazards, and nothing like that has been demonstrated by police or anybody else. So we don't think that that is inconsistent with the intent of the code and the intent of the finding. The number of Part 1 crimes in the census tract is 42% above the city average. However, no Part 1 crimes are associated with the GC3 campus. Police does not have any evidence that the campus itself, the Disney properties, are a crime source or a crime generator. So it is adding the alcohol service will not change, in our opinion, with the conditions of approval, the current safety and operation of the campus. There are no sensitive land uses nearby other than the small residential neighborhood north of the freeway, and then the residential neighborhood also south of the freeway. The issues that might affect the residents in the area would be safety, noise, and again, there's no evidence that noise and safety have been a significant issue. Traffic is a concern of the residents. They remain concerned about the traffic generation by the project as it exists, and they're concerned about the potential for increased traffic. Disney has agreed to a condition 12, in the proposed conditions of approval to state explicitly that guests can use, and in fact are encouraged to use, the surface parking lots within the Disney campus area and the parking structures within the Disney campus area. So the guests and employees will be allowed and encouraged to park off the street. So parking should not be a significant impact to the neighborhood. Since this is a function primarily for employees and occasionally guests, the traffic won't change because the employees are still already going to be there. The occasional special events with guests, and Disney can confirm this, I would assume, would be nights and weekends when employees have gone home, and then there'll be even more parking and less traffic in the neighborhood. Given these factors, staff does not believe that the addition of this conditional use permit function to the Disney campus will change in any significant way the traffic generated by the property or the traffic impacts on the neighborhood. There are a series of 13 conditions. They have been revised this morning. The revised draft has been given to you this morning, to the applicant and to the members of the public who are here and interested in this. Condition 1 was revised because it was a boilerplate condition earlier where I referred to the development shall, and there is no development on the property, so it's been revised to be more specific that this series of conditions applies to the 49 properties when there's a special event serving alcohol. Condition 7 was revised this morning, again, to make specific mention of the 49 properties with special events. Alcohol service during the special events, those functions should not and cannot generate excess music, lighting, noise, and odors that would spill over onto neighboring properties. Disney was concerned that that condition could have been construed to sort of impact their other functions outside of alcohol sales or service during special events.
Okay.
There are no other revised conditions this morning, and I have no further comments, and that completes my staff report, and I'm ready for questions if you have any.
I think that's pretty clear. I guess my questions are more for the applicant. So I would like to call the applicant forward to provide a...
Thank you. We don't expect to take all 15. My name's Adam Gilbert, and I'm a director of corporate real estate for the Walt Disney Company. I want to thank the city and their staff for their input and time to get to the hearing today. The purpose of the request for the conditional use permit is a simple one. We have thousands of employees based in the Grand Central Creative Campus, and on occasion we hold celebratory events, as groups are known to do. The events could acknowledge the launch of a new video game, opening of a new theme park ride, or maybe like an employee retirement. Alcohol is incidental to these events, which are catered events, and they're not what I'd characterize as sort of as a backyard party. Such of these events are infrequent and, as Mr. Hamilton already mentioned, already occur under one-day permits. What we currently do is obtain a one-day permit from the state alcohol beverage control for these events. But obtaining these permits, as Mr. Hamilton had mentioned, is cumbersome, time-consuming, and requires state review and processing for each individual request. To avoid the inefficiencies of the one-day permit process, the state is able to provide basically a blanket permit. And we have Mike Brewer from ABC Consulting, who's our consultant, who will give a little bit more information on the ABC licensure process and some of the current concerns regarding condition number 4. but it's the state that regulates that such a permit requires municipal approval, and hence the application for the conditional use permit today with the City of Glendale. I do want to clarify that public safety is very important to Disney, which is why, first, all of the events are catered and operated by trained staff. This is not an open bar where you can go grab whatever you want. There are trained servers through our catering partners. All events where alcohol service does occur is either behind a fence or inside a building, so that public access there's a barrier for public access. Third, it's a corporate policy that corporate security is present and working at all events where alcohol is served. And again, as Mr. Hamilton mentioned, all guests for any events are invited absolutely to park on property in either our surface lots or in our parking structure. These initiatives, by the way, are already in place for the events that are already occurring with these one-day permits. I want to introduce Mike Brewer, who will come on up and from ABC Consulting and go over the licensure process. But in addition to Mr. Brewer, we have our facilities and our Bon Appetit creating people here if you have any further questions. Thank you.
Good morning. There was one issue is when we're working with the California ABC for this type of license, we have to apply for a Type 47 on-sale general public eating place license. And one aspect of the statute, it does require us to have the venue open to the public at some points, at least once every 15 days, or if we're only doing special events, we have to make those events a space available from time to time for the public to book them. While it's not our intention to encourage, outside events, to outright prohibit them would go against what we need, the requirements of our state licensure. So that's why we have an issue with the language in number 4 that prohibits us from only having events that relate to Disney employees and or guests. There's times where we want to host charitable events on the site. That's not necessarily a Disney event. It's not our guests, but it could be for a community charity. And there's other things like that. So while we don't want to be open a daily restaurant, every day having service of alcoholic beverages, having, people coming and going, we do need to be able to have certain events that we can book on site that would be not necessarily associated with Disney. Oh, yeah. Well, our corporate security policy, as Adam can address, would require that any time there's alcoholic beverages being served on campus.
Is it not? Sorry, our light's on, so I'm not sure when this is on or not. Okay. I'll just repeat it for the camera. My only question is, if you're having these other special events, are you going to have Walt Disney Company employees on site during those special events that are not necessarily Disney events?
Yes. Our corporate policy does require that security be at all events that are alcoholic beverage services being pertained to. And, of course, there would probably be other Disney officials there, plus our catering partners would be there as well.
Okay. And then the other question I would have, do you have language that you would propose that would, I think you know where we're coming from with our concerns with this condition. Do you have other wording for this condition that would be acceptable to you?
Yeah, we're in agreement with the city where we do not want to actively pursue any public access, but our concern is having conditions that may be perceived as in violation of what the state's expecting with their ABC licensure. We'd propose something which maybe would say something along the lines of, except as otherwise required by the state ABC license or something along those lines.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
And that would also probably apply to condition, I think, number 10. It also has some similar language that we'd have to come back if we were going to change from not public events. I don't know which number it is exactly.
Number 10 is the service and consumption of alcoholic beverages shall be in full accord with and only within areas designated by the regulations and conditions established by the State Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control.
Okay, it's number 9 then.
9?
Yeah.
Number 9 is, should the Walt Disney Company wish to expand the scope of the conditional use permit from occasional special events to service of alcoholic beverages unconnected to any special event, the company shall apply for a new conditional use permit. The planning hearing officer's opinion, with concurrence from the Director of Community Development, shall prevail to arbitrate any conflicts in determining whether an expansion of the scope of this permit has or is proposed to occur. Well, if we modify condition 4 to allow you to have certain special events under control of Disney,
Okay.
then I think that would address
you-
our
it's similar
concerns as
kind of-
well, and it'd leave it open to where you could comply with the ABC, if that would be something that you would find acceptable. Or that might be, okay, so that's a possible solution to this. Okay. I guess my other questions would be, when you have a special event, what times do you have them? I mean, you heard neighborhood concerns with traffic and with noise. If you can kind of describe at least the events you've had in the past that you plan to continue in the future. I'm assuming there's no change. That's what I'm hearing. You already get special daily licenses from ABC.
Yes, we have
And so-
we have a permanent license at our studio in Burbank, and then our partner there, Bon Appetit Management, who's the licensee, has a catering permit attached to their license. And
Okay.
so every time they serve an event off of the permanent license at the Burbank studios, they have to get a catering authorization approved by the ABC. And so those events, and we have our partner here, and you introduce your name.
I'm Jason Landau, the general manager with Bon Appetit.
Okay.
We generally we have events at different hours. I mean, generally they're during the day. They're usually
Okay.
Monday through Friday, late afternoons.
Okay.
But they can certainly happen at different times of day, and we do have some. But like I said, the majority are, during the day.
And you control noise, or is that done by how is noise control handled in parking? Is that all done through the catering, or is that done through Disney?
Security. takes
Security
care of it.
goes that? Okay. And so when the invitations are sent, are people told where their parking is available so they don't wander neighborhoods? That's the concern of the neighbors. I just want to make sure that is
Most
addressed.
of these events are people that are already, the attendees are already on campus because they're associated with the Disney. So they're already parked in our structures. However, if there's an event involving people coming from outside the campus, they're given directions of where to go to park and where to check in.
Okay.
The other thing with the, there was one other question I forgot you had as part of that.
I guess part of the other question I had is just the noise, because almost every letter I've received from the neighbors deal with traffic and concerns with noise, and I just want to make sure that
Well, let me hit
we have
the-
that addressed.
The issue on noise is, one is these events are already occurring, and at least to my knowledge, there haven't been any complaints from noise from our activities already on campus. Second, obviously, there's a noise ordinance, and fully will be compliant with that. And again, to mention, any type of these events where alcohol is served, corporate security policies would have them to be present. So they're very aware, and they're obviously in contact with Glendale PD if there were apt to be a noise complaint. But again, we're not aware of any.
Yeah, I mean, our police department hasn't noted any either,
Yeah.
so I just want to make sure we've that
Yeah.
base covered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I have no further questions for the applicant. I'd now like to call forward, we have Fortina Brown.
I live a few blocks from the studios, Grand Central,
Okay.
and we are concerned with the safety, of course, the driving at night. If they drink, they get out of their parties, and our neighborhood usually walk the dogs in that area, and there'll be a danger for people that they be driving drunk in that area.
Have you noticed any problems in the past that have been caused by their parties in your neighborhood? Okay,
But we are concerned about it.
okay.
So I definitely oppose about them having a license to serve alcohol.
Would you understand they are getting daily licenses? Would you rather have them have a daily license or have a license that would cover, I mean, this is a permit that covers a large area, and they would have to be in compliance at all times with that, versus a daily license, which party could happen anytime. I'm asking you that question. Would that make a difference to you?
Well, I feel that if they have a license to do it, they might carry on more if they're having a license all the time.
Okay.
This time, they only had license for whenever they're going to do their activities or their parties.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to? Okay. Thank you. Next, I'd like to call forward Lauren Brown.
Yes, I'm Lauren Brown. I live at 1315 Aristo. I'm opposed any further drinking able to do, just because there hasn't been an accident with somebody getting killed or any tickets given out there by the police department doesn't mean it can't happen. And if you open it up to have more events, you're going to have more possibility of that happening. As far as the parking, we have problems with parking right now. People come there during the day, park in front of our houses. We only have space for 2 cars in front of our houses. Usually it's one person from somebody else, some construction or some plant around there, parks and uses up 2 spots instead of 1. That's one thing. But that has been a problem for 20 years, ever since, ever. And I just feel that the allowing more events, they're right now they're talking about more events besides their little parties, having other events come in there too. That means there's more problems. The people aren't going to go parking where they suggest for them to park. They're going to park wherever they want to, some of them. And you're going to, just because you haven't got somebody killed yet, doesn't mean it's not something like that's going to happen. And they wander down the streets, get off the main streets, go into the residential area. There's kids, all kinds of kids in that area playing and riding bikes. So that's a big concern for my end of it. So I'm definitely opposed. Any other, as far as you want to go, your one-day permits, fine. Let them struggle with that. You give them a blanket, you give them this full permit thing, you're opening more doors for more stuff to go on over there. So.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Thanks. And next, I'd like to call forward Jennifer Pinkerton.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm a little disturbed because the underlying premise here seems to be that, excuse me, this is already going on, so it can't get any worse. But the simple fact is that the conditions in the neighborhood are bad as a direct result of Disney employees and operations. Mr. Hamilton, I invite you to come spend a few days in our neighborhood and witness firsthand the parking impacts. The conditions that are proposed here really are meaningless because they're all strictly voluntary. I'd like to, if I may, summarize some of the negative impacts that go on in the neighborhood on a regular basis. And I also have to comment that over the 4 years that I have lived in the neighborhood, Disney has not once voluntarily come forward with any mitigation measures whatsoever. Every mitigation, minor as they are, that has been offered to the neighborhood came about as a result of bad publicity or requests by the neighbors. Disney has not taken proactive steps. We have approximately 120 employees, Disney employees and contractors, parking in our neighborhood on a daily basis, taking all available street parking. They cause congestion, noise, they litter, they speed, they make unsafe mid-block U-turns to grab parking spaces on the opposite side of the street, and they regularly violate the existing permit parking zones in the neighborhood. I'm calling the police department about that all the time. As far as no record of noise complaints, I'm a little mystified by that because I do make those. All of this was foreseeable during the Creative Campus EIR process, the fact that our neighborhood was going to become an auxiliary parking lot for the Disney employees, and it should have been addressed then. Now is the opportunity and the time for the city to address that significant and very serious oversight and install a preferential permit parking zone for the entire neighborhood. That is the only way to mitigate the negative impacts with which we have to put up. And as far as I want to address 2 of your items for the conditional uses, item 8 about making a conscientious effort to avoid disturbances, and number 12, guests shall be encouraged to use surface parking lots and parking structures. Once a year, Disney issues free collectible pins out of one of its buildings on Flower. The public begins arriving at 2 a.m. They wake up the neighborhood, parking on our street, slamming doors, talking loudly. I have gone and spoken to the guards at this event every single year, and they have told me, yes, we direct employees to park in your neighborhood. This is a little outrageous. It's 2 a.m. in the morning. This year, the guards told me that the Disney managers of the facilities along Flower specifically prohibit them from allowing the public to park in those surface lots. So there you go as far as your efforts for mitigating and reducing disturbances to the neighborhood. This one simple event once a year in Disney can't even address those impacts. They won't. They refuse to allow those attendees to use their surface parking lots. Even the simplest of mitigation members are very onerous. I had requested, I think, 4 or 5 times over about 2 years that Disney installed trash bins, exterior trash bins along the streets because their employees dump fast food litter, and I'm picking that up on a regular basis. I've heard from Mr. Gilbert, he will look into it. No trash bins are in existence. Disney conducts after-hour focus group meetings in its buildings along Paula. Attendees have moved residents' trash bins to clear parking spaces for themselves on the streets. I don't know if those focus group attendees are even allowed to park in the surface lots or in the parking garage, but the point is they are abusing the residents' rights in the neighborhood. Disney has shuttle buses, and Disney has a very large lot on Flower Street north of Sonora. There is absolutely no reason why Disney cannot command and request that its after-hour event attendees park at that lot and provide shuttle service directly to the buildings. We do not want the employees and the contractors parking in our streets during the day. They already are. It's absurd that this continues after hours. Disney occasionally holds weekend events for its employees. Guess where they park? In our neighborhood. The reason they do, it's public nature. It's closer to park in our neighborhoods to walk the 2 or 3 blocks to the parking garage, so they park in front of our houses. Let me see what else. During construction of the child care center, the crew used Truett Street as part of the construction site. Crew members parked there, equipment and supplies were loaded and unloaded, despite the fact that Disney buildings on Paula Avenue were closed during construction. Why didn't Disney do something about that? Why didn't Disney direct its crew members and its contractors and vendors to use those surface parking lots? You tell me if you see any. I don't see any evidence whatsoever that Disney will be taking steps to minimize disturbances, and they have obviously been completely unsuccessful in directing its employees and contractors to utilize surface parking lots and the parking structures. What I am requesting, and this is in response to this permit, but it also was a huge oversight during the EIR process, we want a special preferential parking district for the Grand Central neighborhood bounded by Cosmic Way, Hazel, Cosmic Way, Paula, and Truett Street. The hours for that permit district should be 9 to 9 because we function as an employee parking lot during the day. It's completely unfair to expect us to function as a party attendee parking lot at night. Disney now pays for the permit parking passes for the 9 homes on Truett Street. That only came about because of all the negative publicity about the impacts of construction. I call upon the city to require Disney to pay for every single permit for every single home and structure in the Grand Central neighborhood for up to 3 permits per home. I calculate the total annual cost at $10,000. That is a pittance for Disney, and it is mitigation that is long overdue. I've cited example after example where Disney obviously is not mitigating disturbances, where despite their best efforts, their employees, their contractors, their vendors, and their guests park on our streets. Enough is enough. Please return the neighborhood to the neighbors. Thank you.
Okay. And next, I'd like to call the applicant forward again. We have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you. I don't think there's much else to add. Again, parking and mobility and safety, again, are very important to the company. We have excess parking beyond code, but as some of our neighbors have mentioned, is that, that we can't compel people to park, and we've actually have, when we've been made aware of issues in terms of vehicle safety, we've called Glendale PD to monitor Flower Street, for example. And if they're citing our employees, they're citing our employees. But mobility and safety and parking, we are, again, compliant with code. We have no issue with a permit parking in that neighborhood. We do not want our employees or our guests parking in those neighborhoods, but it's allowed by law. The city permits it. But again, I think that comments about noise, my understanding is no one's ever commented about noise from an event with alcohol. To clarify, Jennifer Pinkerton has contacted us, and it's about amplified music at the child care center, which we've talked to with our operators at the facility. So I believe that we've continued to be and have been a good neighbor and continue to will be under this permit. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And I don't have any further questions. I don't have any other cards. With that, I'm going to take this matter under submission, and I am taking this item under submission, and I am closing this public hearing. And thank you for attending.